Check out these adorable summer sandals that I found on eBay. Those bright colors to go with all my summer clothes. Ah, I had to get them. And this is what I got. My goodness, it was so cheaply made. The materials are inexpensive. Even look at the bumps down there from where the sides were glued in between. And the little thing on back had a piece of plastic that I popped right off. Those look like they came from a bubblegum machine. Well, I thought, man, I could make my own. I like these little danglies. I like the design. I even like the, cute little bracelets there that they use, those friendship bracelets. But I'm going to go ahead and get my own stuff from like Walmart and make my own design. Yes, those are pretty. And I'm going to make more something that looks like that as opposed to that. That's kind of cheap, and I mean, like I said, the design's cute, but so this is what I did. I made one that has the brighter turquoise and hot pink, and so this is the end product of what I'm going to be showing you, all the different knots that I used, and the tassel and the beads, and those are a half knot there around the toe, where your square knots are around the side of the foot, and just the different things I use. So what I did first is I took the lace out and I opened it up so that I could see the exact design. I got this vinyl type material from Walmart, kind of soft on the back side, but more of a slick, water resistant edge on the top side. And I traced out each part of the design there, the side that goes over the foot. I traced and cut that out. I traced the back part. Now remember, there's a slit there, so when you trace that back part out and cut it out, you'll have to make that slit. So what you do is you bend it at the top, right in the middle of where that slit would be, and you cut those little slits right as big as they need to be for that ankle piece that's going to fit through. And so there you see where the ankle part goes through. And there's the ankle piece there. We trace that, cut that out. And then there's, of course, the foot, the part that goes over your toes, cut that out. And then you have to do the foot part itself. So you trace around the edge of the shoe to get the right size and trim it all nice. And there's the part of the foot that goes on the bottom. So now we're ready to get some lining. There's a lining material that doesn't fray, that's real nice and slick, that will absorb moisture, but it doesn't fall apart when you cut it. So we use that then to cut a lining to cover up the stitches that we're going to be doing as we stitch those to the shoe that we're going to do, because we're going to leave stubs to stitch to. So that'll be all lined and soft against your foot. You can see here that lining causes it to be soft against your foot in case your foot gets all sweaty, and it matches the silver vinyl that I chose too, so it's really nice. Now what you're going to do is you're going to cut off all those cheap parts, and you're going to leave stubs to sew to. Now over the toe they had a chain, so I had to cut that off with pliers there, and then I cut the rest of it off with scissors. But again, I left a good size stub to be able to sew what I'm going to put on as the top of my shoe. But then they had those friendship bracelets that I peeled off and cut those off because I didn't want that all globbed beneath what I'm going to put on there. But there's that stub there that I have as a good anchor. So here's your base that you're going to be working from to anchor everything to. And I left that piece there. Oh, and there's that buckle on that ankle piece. We'll go ahead and use that buckle, so just clip it off and save the actual buckle for us to put our ankle piece through and use it, because it's a nice little buckle. It's simple and easy. So we will just remove that, but then save the buckle on the other end of that. This back piece is flat enough, you can just sew right onto it and it's no big deal, so we'll save it. But the rest of them are stubs that we will anchor our other stuff to. So let's start anchoring stuff piece by piece. And I'm going to be sewing them on. I'm not going to be gluing them because sewing them is much more reliable. And so each piece will be sewn, hand sewn on and machine sewn of what I can fit in the machine. The ankle piece just slips in before you put the buckle on. Now I use this bamboo cord for the colors. It works nicely, and oh, there's my kitty. She likes to help. But what I did with the bamboo cord is I cut each piece into a 36-inch piece, so a yard long. And then I clipped them to a clipboard so that they would be nice and steady. Those two center pieces will be clipped down at the bottom because they'll need to stay tight as you're tying each knot. So these knots that I'm going to be demonstrating will be the square knots, a real popular knot that you can do for bracelets nowadays. Fold the piece on the left to form a loop on the left, and then the right piece will go underneath that behind the center pieces. Then you pull it through and pull it tight. Then you bring the loop over to the right to where your piece goes underneath that string, underneath the middle strings, and through the loop that's on the right. So you start out with a loop on the left, then you do the loop on the right, then you do the loop on the left, then you do the loop on the right. You see the pattern there. Anyway, you do that to the length that you desire for however long. So that's how long I needed it to be for that side piece. You'll see each piece needs to be just a little bit different. Now when I cut that off, you'll notice that the pieces in the middle were extra long because they were just clipped to the board. The other two pieces were the ones you're tying the knot with. For your next set of knots, you'll just use those shorter ones as the middle and the longer ones to tie the knot with. These are half knots, and you'll see they're spirally. For those, I wanted it thicker, so I used 4 strings of each color. I put 2 of each color in the middle, clipped them tight to the clipboard, and then I started tying the half knot. Half knot, you just make your loop on the left like you did the square knot and pull it through, pull it tight. But then instead of going on the right, just always make your loop on the left and just keep doing it that way with the same pattern. And it'll naturally start spiraling. You don't even have to turn it. It'll just start spiraling while you're tying it. Then when you get to the center, I decided to put some beads on in the center as a focal point. So I took 2 of the center cords and, oh, there's my helper. And I put the beads on those center cords. Oh, the life of a cat. Anyway, so I put those through, threaded them through. Then what I did is I took the cords on the outside because they had been used to tie the knots this whole time, so they're quite a bit shorter now than the center cords. So now I'm going to use the center cords to tie the knots with. So I split those apart, set them aside on either side, keeping the colors together, and I take those shorter cords now and pull them down to be the center cords, which I clip them tightly to the board. And then I'm going to finish tying the rest of these knots with those other cords. So I'm going to tie them nice and tight with the same pattern, having the loop to the left the whole time. But I want to keep those beads tight so they don't flop around, and just tie them nice and snug. And we'll be sewing those on that piece that I have to go across the toe. So there, get all those, and make sure they're all nice and no loops or gaps, nice and tight, nice good knots. So I did that, and then on the back I used alternating square knots. There's 1, there's 2, there's 1, there's 2. So what you're going to do is you're going to have your, like you did at first for the half knot, only you do a square knot to get it all nice and tight. But then you're going to separate it out. You'll make a square knot using these 4 cords on this side and the other 4 cords on the other side. So you make your square knot, but you want to make sure to leave about a ½ inch or so from the square knot that you started with, because that negative space where you actually don't have a knot tied will be part of the pattern. And you do it on the other side as well, keeping the distance from the first knot the exact same amount as you did on the last side, and make your little square knots nice and tight. So you're going to have a top square knot, a little bit of space, and a side square knot. Then you go back to the center again and do a center square knot. So it'll look like this: top square knot, side, middle, side, bottom. So there you go, alternating square knots. Now we get to sew it to our piece that's going to go on the shoe. So what you do is you put it to where your ends are going to be tucked in underneath. So you sew it right there, and I'll show you what it looks like a little bit better here in a sec. But I sewed those in, clipped off the excess little things so they look like that. Then I double sewed it so that if it started to fray, it wouldn't fall apart. So there it's sewed to the piece, and I clip off those extra ends. Fold it over so you have a nice clean edge to it, And now you're going to do the same to the top part. You're going to fold it in, sew those little tips under so they're tucked in. So this is what it's going to look like on each piece. You sew them on tucked in like that, so when it's folded over you don't see them. Now that one, you make sure that you have it to where when you bend it over, it's not too tight, that it lays perfectly on that piece. Now there's my alternating, and you can see the stitches on the back, but I stitched them, but I made sure to keep those clear so that I could still put that ankle piece through. Now on the side pieces, they're all sewn to where the ends are tucked in. Then I sewed the string of knots down flat through the center of the knot to the vinyl. This one I was able to sew in the machine because I fit it through, but obviously keep that part clear for the ankle slip to go through. And I went ahead and sewed the piece, that buckle piece on there. The other end of the buckle piece will need to be slipped on, and then you'll have to poke a hole for that little piece in the middle. So you poke a hole with something sharp there and stick that piece through, and then you'll be just tucking the rest of it in, and that's super easy. And so this buckle, they had it just slips right over there and just slips around, so that was easy. Now this is where I've sewn them all on to the stubs that I have, but at this point is the point where I want to put my lining on. Hot glue I used didn't stick well, so I went ahead and sewed them on also, but I left those little tabs there so that as I glue the other part on with super glue, it won't have any gaps. So now it's time to do the crisscross on the top of the foot. So we're going to be poking holes, 3 of them on each side with a sharp object. And then we're going to be taking 3 cords of the color you want, and I put a little bead on each top where it crisscrossed. So we'll poke those cords through, pull them on through, crisscross them, put the bead on at this time, just through one from each side, and then we pull through the others, put our bead on there, tie it together, and then I just braided the tips that were left and let the braid hang down. It looked kind of cute. And at the bottom of the braid, I'll show you, I did a wrap to keep the braid from coming undone and fraying. And when you do a wrap, you take another piece of excess cord, you put a little loop there and have a tip sticking out, and you take the long part of the cord and wrap it nice and tight. Wrap it nice and pretty and even, and then take the tip of the wrap when you're done at the very bottom and stick it through that loop at the bottom. Now the top of that then is still sticking out the top. You pull that to where the loop comes up under your wrap, and you cut off the excess. And then you cut these off at the bottoms nice and even. So now we're going to make our tassel that goes on the back of the shoe. Tie a cord around your little ends that you have left over, and right in the middle, tie it nice and tight like in a knot, and then fold it over really tight, and we're going to do a wrap here as well. You'll see the little loop that we have that'll be sticking out the bottom of the wrap and the top, and then just wrap it nice and tight. Not so tight you can't pull it through, but tight enough. And then take the tip of it at the bottom and put it through that loop. Yeah, pull it tight there because I don't want it to come undone. Pull it through that loop, then pull your string up at the top, and that'll pull that loop up under the wrap, and then you just clip off that end so it doesn't stick out, and there's your tassel. Now I'm going to make it the exact same size as my other tassel, so we're going to clip off those excess ends there to make it the same size, and then there's your tassel for your shoe. Now I'm going to use regular thread and needle, but I'm going to double that thread so it's a nice double. So I'm going to pull it to where the ends are the same and tie a knot at the end. Clip off the excess there. Then I'm going to put the knot through the top part underneath some of those threads so it can be hidden, the knot inside there. And then I'm going to poke it through the bottom of the shoe because I want my tassel to dangle from the bottom of that bottom side of that ankle part. So I'm going to clip that off and then poke the thread through, but I'm going to have it to where it comes out the top of the tassel. Then I'm going to put it through the bottom part of the ankle part. Now, when you're attaching these, you'll want to start with the bead that you want closest to the ankle part first, then the next bead, then the next bead, on down to the bead that dangles on the bottom. The bead that dangles on the bottom has to have a loop on the very top of the bead because it has to dangle. And then after you put it through that bottom one, then you'll put the thread back up through the beads again. So the thread has to go through the beads twice. And then you connect it to the bottom of the ankle place, the same place that you started at. But you don't want to do it too tight, because if you pull it too tight, then it won't dangle. It'll just be this stiff kind of thing hanging there. You want to leave leave it loose, but not to where you can see the thread. So see how it dangles there? Tie your knot, then poke your thread through there and tie the knot off really good so where it's hidden. And that's how I did all the jewels that are dangling down from the ankle piece. I did 2 on either side of that back piece that comes up over your heel. So there's 2 there and there's 2 there. And so now it turned out to be just the colors that I wanted. The materials are a lot more solid and sound and not as cheap as what I had purchased. I did like the design, so obviously copied the design and thought it turned out really well. So I hope this has inspired you to maybe try your own redesign of a cheap pair of sandals with much better quality materials, with the jewels that you pick and just the colors that you need, and have fun. I do want to acknowledge my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for the creativity that He gives me that I so enjoy.